Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Mpoomy Ledwaba, aka Mrs. Mom. Thank you so much to the notification gang. Welcome to all the new subscribers. I see you guys, and thank you to everyone who always likes and comments. I may not be able to respond to everyone, but I try. But I see your messages and we appreciate all the engagement. So today is a sit down, a story time that I'm gonna share a story that I've never shared before, besides to my husband and my therapist and a very close friend of mine. I believe I'm at a point where I'm ready to share, because I believe I've healed. Although, I mean, you get really good days, and there's just days that are really bad, but I think for the most part I've healed. So the other day I actually tweeted that God can't heal what you don't what you hide from him, and actually people came at me like, oh, but doesn't God see everything? And I tried to explain that it's not really about God not knowing. He knows exactly what's happening in our lives, but when we get to a place of confession, to a place of revealing it to him, it heals us. So the us speaking it to God, telling it or showing it to God is really about us rather than for him. So what I knew, I never ever planned on sharing this story. I just felt like, you know what, it's part of what has happened to me and nobody needs to know about it except the people close to me. But I felt a prompting in God that this is something I have to share, not because I like having my tea or my business on camera, but to help somebody. You know, after I lost my sister in January due to depression, and so much happened in her life, I vowed to myself and to God that I would spend the rest of my life speaking on things, making sure that other girls or other boys, young people, don't have to go through things that lead them to self-harm, that lead them to depression, and that lead them to suicide. So I'm not yet qualified or well researched on mental health, and that's why I don't really speak about it, but I will speak on the parts that I do know. So there was a conversation that was happening on Twitter, and someone actually tweeted this, and it made me feel like, okay, maybe I think it's time for this video. She said, someone once tweeted, if most women were to re-examine their first sexual encounter, they were to come to the realization that it was rape, and there have been many more. I agree with that. So to share my story and how my sexual experiences started, when I was 14 years old, I just started high school. I got in a relationship with a guy who was older than me. At the time, he was 17 years old, and I guess I was just really, I don't know, excited, charmed, and I thought nothing of it. I mean, I'm just new in high school, and I'd had boyfriends before, but nothing really transpired, you know. And I really wanted him to like me and accept me, and I think I could kind of tell that, yeah, he liked me because I'm the new girl, but he wasn't really sold out on me, except that he wanted to use me. I guess at the back of my mind I knew that, but I didn't take it seriously enough. So fast forward, without going into a lot of details, we started, I guess, dating and hanging out after school, hanging out during sports practices, in the school bus, kissing, and all of that light stuff that you take for granted and you think, this is where it's gonna stop, you know. But when you're 14 years old, in fact 14, 16, 17, and you're dating someone older, they're in control of the relationship. You're not mature enough to tell where the relationship will go, and you're also really not mature enough to put things to a stop. You're so easily manipulated. Please excuse the dog sounds. The dog is like fighting with teddies and all sorts of things outside, so please don't pay attention to that. And so yeah, that happened until eventually one time, after losing someone close to my heart, I was home and I invited him to, I first asked to, he wanted to meet up, and my parents went at home, and I agreed to go meet up with him, and we went to meet up, and it got cold, and I said, you know what, let's go chill at my house, nobody's there, you know. And my mind didn't think as far. That's why I say, when you're that young, you're very naive when you in your teens. In fact, you're very naive. I could say almost up to like 21, 23. You're very naive and immature in your decision making. And he agreed. And on the way to my house, he was very like rude, not kind, not nice at all. But I was just like, oh, maybe he's just having a bad day. He's my boyfriend, you know. And we got home and we chilled, and he wanted to make out, and I thought, oh, we always do this. We always make out, we always kiss, and that's where it stops. So this is what will happen. And then that's what happened. And then that's when he wanted to have sex with me. And I said no. You know, at first I was like shocked that, my goodness, I'm 14 years old. Why would you think that this would result in sex? My mind never ever got to a point where I thought I would have sex with this guy. It was just a relationship where we kiss, and that's where it ends. For all I know, I'm Christian, and sex before marriage is not right, so I'm not having sex. And he insisted, you know, but gently. And I think that's the important part to point out, that rape won't always be forceful. It won't always be a gun to your head or someone shouting, kicking and screaming at you. He was very gentle in coercing me, in convincing me. And I kept saying no, and I kept saying no, but he didn't stop. And he continued until you know someone's on top of you who is twice or three times your size, and you've got no voice left because you're just tired of saying no. And he thinks, I don't know, I guess it's a game. And yeah, and that's how I lost my virginity at 14 years old. And afterwards he got up, he got dressed, and he left, and that was it. And I was left shattered, but so confused. I didn't know what just happened. I didn't know. I'm like sitting here, okay, I just lost my virginity. I didn't plan for it. He didn't use a condom. What if I'm sick? What if I'm pregnant? God, what if you hate me? Can you imagine what's going through a 14-year-old's mind? And the problem is, I can't tell my mom. I can't tell anybody because I brought this guy into my house and he's my boyfriend. So nothing in my mind thought rape, you know. And I told my older sister. I called my older sister and I told her what happened. The only reason I told her was because I was scared. What if I'm pregnant, or what if I'm HIV positive? And she called my mom. She told my mom. And my biggest mistake was not telling the full story. So from that moment, I took it upon myself. I took that burden that I'm the girl who brought a boy home, and this boy had sex with me, and my virginity is gone, and that's it. I just have to deal with the consequences. Luckily for me, I have a really great mom who took me to the doctor. We got all the tests done, and everything was fine. But it was just such a sensitive thing that we just buried it. So, and that's how my sexuality began. After that, I learned last year in therapy. I have a very controlling nature, and it came to a point where it became excessive. And last year during therapy, that's when I discovered that that's where that controlling thing started. That's why they always say you need to heal from your childhood traumas. And I think from that moment, that's when I decided I'm going to be the one who's in control in relationships. No guy will ever decide when we have sex, where we have sex, or how it goes down. I'm the one who decides. And from then, I think I probably took like a year or 2 year break, but from the age of 16, I started being in sexual relationships with every guy I dated. I wouldn't call it promiscuity because, well, actually, maybe it is, maybe it's not, but every relationship I was in, sex was on the table for me, you know, and it was no big deal as long as I'm in control, as long as I have the final say. And I just continued like that. And as I matured in Christ, and as I matured as a girl, and I have a friend who, the one I spoke about earlier, that we were so close, and we spoke, we shared a lot, we had a lot in common, have a lot in common. And as she shared her story, that's when it kicked to me that, hey, I've actually been sexually abused, and I've been covering this hurt so much, not wanting to speak about it and putting the blame on myself. All my life I've blamed myself, and she was basically the first person I said to her, friend, I was sexually abused. My virginity was taken away without my consent, whether I had a gun to my head or the guy just kept coercing, pushing. And there I got a mentor, and we started talking, and I guess it started my journey of healing. And eventually I spoke to my mom about it, and I said, Mom, on that day, this is what had happened. It was actually rape. It's called date rape, and I guess statutory rape because he was 17 and I was 14 years old. But I think I still wasn't ready to deal with it. And that's why and that's why Brendan and I are doing so much of these marriage videos, and we speak about how therapy is so important, that before you get married, you need to deal with your childhood stuff, because you bring that stuff into your marriage, And he was basically the first guy that I dated or got in a relationship with where I said, oh, it was enough for me, the whole sex thing. I was not gonna fall into that trap anymore. And he was the first guy I actually told about what had happened. And yeah, until last year, after having a baby, there's postpartum depression, and everything really got a lot for me. And that's when I started therapy, and I started really, really dealing with what happened to me. So I share this story not because I'm looking for sympathy. I don't need sympathy. I'm fine, in fact. But I share this story to help a girl out. Firstly, in your dating decision, people always ask me, when's the right time to date? I say, if you can put it on hold, do that, especially in your teen years. I watched how it really shattered my sister's life, the one who passed on, how dating just really messed with her life, how it messed with my life, and so many other people in my life, how it's messed with them, because when you're that young, you don't know who you are. And the other party as well, the boy you're dating probably doesn't know who he is. All he hears is street talk, that if a girl says no, she probably just wants you to beg her, all of that rubbish, nobody's mature yet. So if you're in your teen years and you can put off dating, do that. Number two, it may seem like you just kissing or doing that, but that's how it starts, because you start by kissing, then thoughts get planted in your mind, and then each step that you take, the further you go, the more things become okay, until you find yourself in situations where you can no longer turn back. And then another point is, if you're in a situation where you're sexually harmed, this could be even if there's no penetration, but someone forces you or sexualizes you or touches you in a way that is uncomfortable. It can be a cousin, an uncle, a boyfriend. In fact, emphasis on a boyfriend, because we think boyfriends can't rape you, or we think husbands can't rape you, but the truth is they can. If you say no and the person continues, that is rape. So what was my point? Yeah, if a boyfriend or cousin or whoever is close to you, because most times rape doesn't happen with someone you've never met. It's mostly people around you, people you know. Talk to somebody immediately. Don't take the guilt. I took guilt for 12 years. For 11 years of my life, 11 years of my life, I carried the guilt that I brought him into my house. And that is a heavy burden to carry. And if you don't deal with that, the enemy will use it to try and destroy your life. like he did with me, how he tried to destroy my life by using sex as a tool, because that's how he opened that door, you know. But God redeems. But I don't want you to go through that, because it doesn't take the pain away. You heal. It's like a scar. My therapist actually explained it like that. It's like when you get hurt, nah? Immediately you're bleeding and you feel the pain, but eventually after some time, after years, it becomes a scar. The scar doesn't go away. You can still see it, although it doesn't hurt. So the scar will always remain, even though it doesn't hurt. So talk to somebody, go to the cops, speak to a close friend, speak to your mom, somebody. It doesn't matter how the situation came about, whether you're the one who invited the person to your home or you're the one who went to their house. But if somebody abuses you, talk about it and see somebody. And then another point is the soul tie. Now, speaking of soul tie is a whole nother video, but which is something I could equate to how I treated sex, my sexual experiences throughout my teen years, is that sleeping with somebody is not just physical. There's a bond that is created between you and that person. Now, me having sex with my husband, there's a bond that is created, a spiritual bond, but that is a good bond because God is involved in that. But me sleeping with randoms, that is a tie, that is bad bondage, that is a bad spiritual tie, soul tie that is created. So a soul tie was obviously created with the guy, and I know he was a promiscuous guy. He slept with every girl he could sleep with, and that sort of became my story. That's how I started to treat sex, you know, knowing the word of God, knowing the truth about sex, knowing the truth about who I am. It was just how I just began to live my life, that it's just sex, and it's not just sex, you know. And you get to a point where it almost destroys your life, so it's not just sex. So yeah, so I'm sharing my story because pop culture has now made sex this worldly thing, this thing that, you know what, as long as girl, get yours, get your man, get your one night stand, do this. And that's not the case. Sex was designed by God for marriage, and once it's outside of there, there's consequences such as unwanted pregnancy, consequences such as STDs, HIV and AIDS, soul ties, and the list is stress. The list is just so endless, you know, depression, feeling unwanted. And so I'm here to say to that young girl, or even if older girl, if you're older than me, is if you've experienced some form of sexual abuse, if your first experience with sex has left a scar in you, please deal with it. See somebody, talk to a professional, deal with it, break that soul tie, renounce it. But most importantly, forgive the person, because that's how a soul tie keeps you in bondage. If you don't forgive the person, I'm not saying forgive them because they deserve it, but forgive them for yourself, to free yourself and to break that bondage of a soul tie. And don't use sex as just a way of, it's my body, I'm in control, I can do what I like. That's just not, you just opening a can of worms. But I'm also here to say that God heals, and he can use that mess, that pain, that trauma for his glory, or to save somebody else's life. You know, you can go from being a victim to honestly just spreading the word of God, being a victor. So yeah, so I just decided to share my story because of what I saw on Twitter, and this tweet really provoked me. The conversation was about a girl, I think a 15-year-old dating a 20-year-old, and people were saying people can date who they like, and culture might think that's okay. But think about it, you're 15 years old, what do you know? And you're with a 20-year-old, what do you think he wants from a 15-year-old? What could be so interesting about a 15-year-old to a 20-year-old? So guard your heart, guard your soul, guard your body, guard who you listen to, guard what you listen to, and protect yourself. You don't have to go through what I went through. You don't have to have my experiences. take it from me, it's not nice, it's traumatic, it takes time to heal. But if you've been there already, God can heal, and He is in the business of healing. So yeah, that is just the story I wanted to share. It's not like people call it a testimony that I'll be sharing every time. It's not something I enjoy talking about, or I want to carry with me that, oh yeah, I'm the girl who got raped. No, it's something that happened. I'm moving through it, and having a daughter now and having another child on the way, it's so important for me to break those generational curses. And it's so important for me that I can have those conversations with my children, and to be open and honest. I truly believe, had that day I was honest, if I had been honest with my mom that day, so much could have changed about my life. But I chose to carry the guilt simply because I was immature and I didn't know better. And that's why I say, if you're young, leave that stuff alone. Leave sex alone. Leave relationships with older people alone. It's like being a young boy running for a shaving stick. It will just simply hurt you. Nothing good can come out of a relationship with older people at a young age. So I hope this video really helps. I will not be taking any questions. Please don't ask me any questions. I've shared what I wanted to share, and I hope it really helps you, and I hope that it changes you. And if you've had to deal with something similar and you've carried guilt, I hope that it will really free you. But as the Word of God says, we need to worship God in spirit and in truth. That is the truth. We need to be truthful with what has happened, what we're going through, and we need to go and confess to God so that He can start the healing process. But for as long as I carried it as guilt and shame and didn't want to go before God about it, it just caused more pain and harm in my life. But the minute I open myself up, like David always says, the minute I come to you and I confess my sin, you begin to heal me, you begin to deliver me. So yeah, let us face our truths. Let us protect our young ones. For the mothers here on our pages, who actually watch my channel, who have daughters, let's have conversations with our kids. And for us, it means conversations earlier on. I mean, if something like that could happen to me at 14 years old, how much, and that was like 12 years ago, how much sooner should conversations happen with our children? We need to help them understand consent, what no means, and what rape looks like. And even our sons, because you speak to young boys and it seems that they don't really understand the concept of consent. They think it's actually crazy how boys don't understand consent, but simply because we don't teach them. So if we teach our boys consent, then we'll have less problems. So thanks for watching my video. I hope this helped you. Take care, and if you've been through something similar, I pray God heals you and God frees you. God bless you. Love you lots. Take care.